Hey guys, how are you doing? This is Zeb from Zed Outdoors and I hope you're having an awesome day. So today I've come down to see friend and talented craftswoman Andreea Grad. Andreea, how are you doing?
I'm well, Zed. Good to see you.
You too as well. So if you have been watching my channel for some time, you would have seen Andreea make a previous appearance in which we've done a mini-series on spoon carving. We looked at our first video, in which is Andreea's personal process from start to finish on carving a traditional Romanian spoon. From there, we've done a couple of decoration technique videos. We've done one on coral rosin and one on chip carving. If you haven't seen those videos, I will link to those down below. I highly recommend you go check those out. If you're unfamiliar with Andreea, Andreea is originally from Romania and she's currently traveling here in the United Kingdom. She's a professional craftswoman who's currently teaching and also traveling around here in Europe and elsewhere as well. So while she's here passing through London, I've managed to grab her while she's zipping through all of her fancy travels. And in this particular video, what we're going to be looking at is a cool little project that I've been in my mind wanted to cover for quite some time. And as I got speaking to Andreea, the perfect opportunity arose for her to kind of show a process that she uses to carve chopsticks. Now, a couple of things to preface before we get into the meat and bones of this video is that the good thing with carving chopsticks is comparatively to other items you can carve, it's actually quite a simple thing to carve. However, a lot of the principles that are involved in carving chopsticks are absolutely transferable to carving other items such as spoon carving, etc., etc. So even on the face of it, it's quite simple, it can actually be a little bit difficult as well. Right?
Yeah, it is actually, because it's a round shape. Yeah, we'll see, you'll see.
So as we get into the process, you'll see why. So it's kind of, I know it's a bit of a double-edged thing to say, but it's essentially a simple item to make, but actually there are some intricacies involved. But this is what, in this video, we're going to look to explore and kind of demystify all of that and look at a very simple process where technically with just very, very basic tools, you're going to be able to carve a chopstick yourself. So whether you're a green woodworker, whether you're a bushcrafter, whatever you are, as long as you've got a decent knife on you, this is a project you're going to be able to do. So a couple of things to quickly touch on before we get on with the meat and bones of this video is I will put a link down below to Andreea's website and also her Instagram. And like I said, the previous videos that I filmed with Andreea, I will also link to down below as well, which I highly recommend you go check those out. So without further ado, hope you enjoy the rest of this video where Andreea Grad is going to be teaching you how to carve chopsticks. So Andreea, before we begin the process, we're going to have a look at a few chopsticks you've carved yourself.
Yes. So these are some of the chopsticks that I've made. And as you can see, you can be quite creative with them. You can make them different sizes. They're all made out of the same wood that we're going to carve today. I think it's a birch that I've been using. And it's actually seasoned, which is great. It's maybe 5%, and if it has any humidity, but it's a little bit spalted, and there are all these different ways that you can decorate chopsticks, which is quite fun. You can chip carve them, you can do some coral rosing, you can paint them, in all these different ways. This is some decoration that I did with a gouge. So yeah, there are all these different ways that you can be playful with them. Some of them are faceted, some of them are round, most of them are round just because they feel good in the hand. So yeah, this is something that we're going to do. The size varies. It's not necessarily for a child to be used. You can absolutely use smaller chopsticks. Some of them are longer. It's a personal preference, really, how you want to go about it. So that's what we're going to do today. And I wanted to also talk a little bit about the wood in general. It doesn't have to be dry. You can use fresh wood, of course. The only thing is that I recommend, if you're going to use green wood, to make sure to pick a fairly straight grain wood. Otherwise, once it's dry, being that it's a very thin piece of wood, it will just start moving too much and you don't want very crooked chopsticks. So I have here a piece of wood that is fairly straight. It does have a gentle curve in it on some part of it, but overall it's quite it's quite straight, and we're going to do the majority of the work with the axe. So that's what we're going to work with.
Cool. So how are you going to begin the process? Is it with the axe?
Yes. So because it's a fairly straight grain, what I'm going to do, I technically just need a piece of wood that is just a little bit over the diameter of the wood of the final piece that you're creating. So if you have in mind how thick you want to make the chopsticks at the end, just split a piece of wood that is about that big around. And if you have a fairly straight piece of wood, that's going to be quite easy. So I would say about 1.5 centimeters in diameter. And I'm going to try to do a rectangular shape. So because this part here is quite flat, I'm going to just measure about 1 centimeter, about this much, and just try to hopefully split that all along. And then we're going to just split that in half or less, and we're going to have the wood that we're going to work with. So it can be really that easy. And often when we make spoons and we have pieces of wood that we don't need, they're not good enough for a spoon, they're not good at, well, maybe you can make a spreader or whatnot, but yeah, always just have in mind, I can make a chopstick or a hairpin, something like that. So we're going to just split that. This is a temporary mallet. So it is splitting quite well. You can see that it's carrying all the way through, which is great. Sometimes it might not want to do that, and then you might just need to split it a little bit wider. But this is going really well so far. So that's where now we have a piece of wood that is quite the same diameter or the same thickness all the way down, which is fine. Even if it were a little bit thinner, it would have been fine, just because the chopstick itself tapers towards the end. So even if it doesn't split quite equally, you're totally fine with it. So now I'm going to, when I look at the piece of wood, this is quite bowed. So because this is on the straighter line, I'm going to keep on this side with the wood. So I'm going to, and plus one of them will be a little bit colored and one of them will be white. So that's also something fun that you can keep in mind. So I'm going to split it about this size. And the reason why that is because when you are trying, I'm going to get into that a little bit later, but I'll tell you this at the beginning now as well. When you're trying to make a round surface, you're starting with a square. So we're going to make a square surface, so four facets, and then from there we're going to work our way into making it round. So knowing that already, I can start with a square from the beginning instead of a thicker piece that I have to really work with a knife. So I'm just going to use the axe to split it. Hopefully it's going to split all the way down. So it goes all the way down. I'm going to do some tapping. So that's where we have, thank you. That way we have one of them. And then we're going to split it again, about the same thickness, and we're just going to have the second one. Like just like that. Now this one, it's split much thicker, which is fine. I mean, you have an axe in your hand, it's absolutely fine to work with it and start making it square, and that's what we're going to do. Also, this piece of wood is quite long, so we can adjust where we're going to put the chopstick based on where we have the most straight piece. So because it starts curving here, I'm going to put the chopstick towards the top, and I don't really need that much down here. So the next thing, we have the 2 pieces of wood. These are our chopsticks. So now I'm going to work with the axe to start creating that square shape. This is a little bit thicker, and I'm going to make it about that thick. That's really how much we need. So we could technically split this in half and we have 2 chopsticks. But because I wanted to play with this color a little bit, I'm going to use this as well. So this is how we're going to do this. I'm going to just, this is really splitting beautifully all the way down. This could easily be our chopsticks right here. What do you think, Zed? Should we make it out of these 2?
I think we make it out of those 2.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. So now I'm going to, because I have the axe in my hand, if you've already kind of followed my work, you know that I really like to use the axe as much as I can. So I'm wanting to make it square, and because the grain goes quite straight all the way through, I can technically work both directions for now. It's already starting to taper slightly, which is perfect. So I'm basically wanting to create all the sides flat to create that square shape all around. I'm basically making a faceted square piece, just like this, going all the way down and starting to taper about. We're going to make it about this long. So I'm going to mark it here. I'm going to mark it with the axe, just slightly creating a little dent. If you have a pencil, you can absolutely use a pencil. And I'm actually going to take this down and just take this edge, because that's going to be the size that I want to work with. So I don't need that extra piece of wood at the moment. So I know that this is going to be the thickest part and it's going to taper down. So let's start doing that. I'm not going to taper it as much as I would when it's final. I can work that a little bit more with the knife, but as much as I can, I'm going to take it down. So I'm looking on all sides, knowing that they're all going to be about the same, meaning they're going to be thicker here and tapering down towards the end. So I'm looking at that, wanting the sides to be quite straight and tapering into the center of the square, into the center of this whole side. So if it's a little bit thicker on one side or the other, I'm going to try to create it quite flat, tapering down in a more symmetrical way. Also, because this is going to be, we're going to make it into a chopstick that has a round handle. And the reason why I want to do that with you is because in order to get to a round, we will also do the facets first. So it's good practice to try to learn to do both. Learn how to create a round surface and also learn how to create a faceted surface. So why not do both? So right now we have the 4 facets. It's slightly tapering down. I don't want to go any more. I could, but I'm just going to easily use the knife to do that. So this is one of our chopsticks, which is a little bit thicker than this, but not too much. Once we take the corners out to start making it into a rounded shape, you will see that it's getting to be very close to this thickness. So this is our second piece. You can see it's a little bit thicker and much longer. So first, let's just make it the same thickness all around, the same length, sorry. So I'm going to just mark it with the axe. If you have a saw, really easy to just saw this, but we don't have a saw at the moment. So I'm just going to use the axe. Just like that. And just a little bit of a guillotine, just to make this surface a little bit more flat. So I'm going to create first the square here. And then from that shape, I'm going to start using that as a guide. You can see that it's a little bit bowing here, which is fine. I can just take some of that curve off right now as much as I can. Take some of that curve from this side. And I'm holding the knife, the axe, choked up, not all the way, but pretty close. And my thumb, my finger is on the blade, on the axe, on the head of the axe. That allows me to have a little bit more precision. And since I'm working with quite a thin piece of wood, I don't want to accidentally go too deep or create some damage into the wood that I can't fix. So I'm slowly creating that shape, the square shape at the top.
In case people are curious, would you like to just state what axe you're using?
Yeah, this is actually Deborah's axe. It's a Peter Kovach's axe. It's a small one. It's wonderful. It's really well balanced. Has a nice, wide enough blade here to work really well. It's light. I think it's about like 600 grams or something altogether. So it's very comfortable to use. And the handles that Peter makes are wonderful, so highly recommend it.
And for those watching, in case you're unfamiliar, I have done videos with Peter Kovach on putting a handle on an axe head on my channel. Just do a search for Soulwood Creations.
Yes, his work is wonderful. So again, I'm trying to create that tapered shape from the widest point, which I created here, which will be the top of the chopstick, tapering down. So I did this profile, and now I'm going to do this profile, so I'm going to taper down from both sides. So as you can see, I'm not starting from the top, maybe like a third down, because that top part I want to keep as the thickest, so I don't need to touch it. And we did one side, and now I'm going to do the same on this side. And I'm not going to go really thin, just because it's a little bit more risky. We can do that with a knife quite easily. But what we can afford to take off with the axe, we will. And when you have a straight grain wood, that's why I recommend a straight grain wood. You can expect it to behave in a certain way, and it's easier to work with the knife and also with the axe. So here we have the two pieces, just like that. One is a little bit thicker than the other, but we can easily either adjust that right now, or we can do that with a knife. And that's one of the most, I guess, challenging parts of doing a chopstick set, is you want to match the two. So that will be probably the hardest bit, but
But it also, I guess, gives people the opportunity to practice their axe skills.
Exactly, yes. You can practice your axe skills. This is something that you will definitely do for anything that you're working, a spoon, a spreader. Right now we are practicing just creating a flat surface, which you will need to do on a spoon handle, you would do on a spreader. So this is something that can be, like Zed said at the beginning, absolutely transferable skill to use on a spoon or whatever else you're creating. So here we have the two shapes, and we are ready to start with the knife work. That was really that easy. That's all the axe work that we will do.
So Andreea, we're back in the warmth.
Yes.
So what's next in the process?
So now that we have these two pieces, the next is to slowly work our way into a round shape. And when you start making a round shape, so now we have 4 sides. What we're going to do is create 8 of them. So we're going to take the corners, the edges of all these facets, and we're going to start creating 8 of them. And then we're going to round those, and we're going to end up with a round shape. So that's how you get from a stick to a round stick. You're basically methodically, and I like to go that way because if I were to just start rounding randomly at this point, I might dig too deep on one side or the other, and you won't end up with a round shape that's smooth all the way down. You might end up with a more of a wobbly shape that's still smooth, but it's not going to be the final piece that you want. So, and the fun thing about making chopstick is chopsticks, or I recommend making 2, but you can do just 1. You only need a sloyd knife, really. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a fancy sloyd knife. It can also be a, I don't know, can you do it with a bushcraft knife?
You can, because
right?
you've got the Scandi grind.
It's just basic, yeah. So it's something fun that you can try. It's something fun that you can do. It's fun, great for children who want to get into this. So something you can do with your kids, or all of those things. Impress your girlfriend, camping, all of those things.
I'm taking notes here.
So,
and actually, just before you begin, touching on the knife itself, what knife are you using?
Yeah, this is made by Peter Kovac. It's a really wonderful knife. I've been using this all throughout my travels, and I've only had to sharpen it a couple of times. It's held its edge really, really well. The handle fits wonderfully. It's just the right fit for me. So yeah, I've been really, really happy with this knife, actually. High praise to Peter. It does wonderful work. And the axe was also by Peter, which I'm also impressed with. So yeah, this is the knife that I have at the moment. So the first thing that I do, we've created those 4 sides with the axe. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually flatten those quite nicely on all 4 sides. And the reason why I'm doing that is, again, because I want to have a smooth, clean finish all the way through the process. And there are quite a few holds that you can use to do this, keeping in mind the grain orientation. So the grain is going straight down, and because we are tapering it at the end, it's going to be quite easy to cut through it. We're not going to come up against the grain, except if we go in this direction, because we're coming up into the wider part. So you always want to work from the highest point down if you look at the profile of the piece of wood that you're working with. So it's going to be quite easy. That's another fun part about chopsticks, is that it's just quite easy to work with it. So I'll show you the few holds that you can use to work with the chopsticks. Some of them are simple, some of them are more advanced. Both are fantastic to practice, particularly if you're beginning spoon carving and want to get a hold of the grips that you're using, and you can transfer those to using for spoons. You can practice them on chopsticks. So one of them is where you are quite firm into your grip. Your arm is locked, resting on your thigh, and you are pushing down with your knife where your wrist is locked with your elbow. So you're not doing this. You are moving down in a very controlled manner. And you can see at this time that I'm only taking the high points of the surface I'm moving on. Just my hand, my left hand in this case, is holding the piece of wood quite firmly. So I'm trying to keep it steady as the knife moves across it. That's one of the ways that you can do this. Another way is you can lock the arm with the knife. Elbow is straight, locked in. And what I'm doing now, I'm pulling the piece of wood. I personally find this easier. It's not as, I find I can control it better. So I just easily bring the piece of wood towards me while keeping the knife steady. So that's the one I prefer. Just gently, my right arm, the arm with the knife is locked, not moving at all, and that, I find that quite easy to use. And I just adjust the angle of the way that I cut by dragging the piece of wood at a certain angle. You can drag it this way or more this way. You will feel the way that to start with, you can just drag it along without cutting at all. And if you just adjust the knife a little bit and just twist it, it starts to catch. It's going to start catching onto the wood, and that's where you just start cutting these beautiful curls. So that's how we are going to basically shape the chopstick. So that's one of the ways. Another way, so you can see right now we already did quite a beautiful job at flattening these areas. And sometimes you don't quite see very well with the naked eyes, so you can absolutely feel your way through and get a sense of how the facets feel. So from here, where we started cutting all the way down, where it's pretty good. Now we have this section, and because I'm gripping onto it, I can't come up this high. So this is where we introduce a cut that it's sometimes very difficult for people when they start spoon carving. But if you master this, and if you practice this, it's going to open so many doors into spoon carving. You're going to use it so much. And it's a fantastic grip for your tool and your work to start working on wood. So what I'm doing here, ideally you want to have something on your chest that it's hard, particularly because you're working with something that it's quite pointy at this point, and it will get pointier as we go along. So you are creating a vise in between your hand and your chest. This is what keeps your piece of wood steady. Between my index finger and my chest, this is how I'm holding it together. With my palm is going to be the rest area, so I'm going to bring it underneath, orienting in front of me, perpendicular as much as you can. So as much as you can, bring your hand into you. Not like this, just as much as you can, bring your wrist into you, into the center. And I'm resting the piece of wood onto it. So this is going to be my vise. It's quite safe. It's quite, if I press on it, it's quite steady. And that's what you want. Now, the fingers that are loose are all these 4 fingers. This is going to rest onto the side. It's going to participate in keeping this piece of wood steady. These are the fingers that I'm going to work with, the knife. So when you start doing this, I recommend to just put the blade flat onto the surface and just get used to this motion. You can get used to this motion with another piece of wood, not even the knife. Just get used to what is keeping steady and what is moving. There are so many pieces in this grip here. The surface that is resting on, these are steady. This is moving. My elbow is close to my ribs, so pretty much all this area here right now is locked in. The only pieces that are moving from my shoulder, from the bottom, from my rib cage all the way to my shoulder, are just these fingers. Everything else is locked. So this is what we're going to do with the knife, basically. And if I take the knife, I'm going to put it down without cutting at all. As you can see, this I'm only pressing with I'm only bringing the knife towards me with my fingers. And now if I rotate slightly the knife into the wood and it starts engaging just a little bit, that's when I'm starting to cut. And you can do that just to get a sense of what it feels like. Make sure that this part of your hand is out of the way. You don't want it to catch. So that's why I'm suggesting to bring your palm underneath flat, because this needs to be out of the way. So just like this, this is one of the ways that you can cut this piece towards the handle. So I'm going to twist it just to make sure how it looks from the profile, and I'm going to keep going, feeling my way. So this is how we work at the top. If I want to work a little bit here, I'm going to pinch the spoon with these 2 fingers, exactly the same thing. These are the fingers that are holding the spoon steady. These 3 are doing the work. The same exact thing as before, just a different positioning because I don't have any other solution really. So this surface is quite flat now, and we're going to do the same exact thing on these 3 areas right now. The same thing. I don't want to take that much wood. Even for me, it's a little bit too much. So just go thinner. Just take a little bit less. I'm not bringing this towards me. This hand is completely relaxed. I'm only holding the knife. I'm not using any force in this hand. All the movement is happening from these fingers. And I only go as far as I can with those. Stopping here, can't go further. So I'm also checking to make sure the surface is flat. So I don't quite see very well because the wood is quite white. So I'm just checking to make sure. And that looks pretty good. So we're going to do the same on this side. And that's one of the beauties of working with straight grain wood. You can see that the grain changes a little bit here, that it's ripping, but it's not too bad. So, and now I just have this side. So now here it's changing directions. So I'm going to try to see if it lets me go this way. And it does, which is a little bit unexpected, but you always listen to the grain. So I'm glad that this happened. So it's a good example that sometimes what we think will happen, it's not always the case. So I want to see if I can go in the opposite direction here. And yes, so just change direction just at the top. Quite surprisingly. So now I'm going to do a little bit more. This is another movement that you can do, which is the thumb push, which you can practice over here as well. Instead of this, you can just work your way down with the thumb push, which there are two things happening here. One is I'm bringing the chopstick towards me as I'm pushing the knife away. So I'm bringing the chopstick towards me and I'm pushing with my thumb. So it's this motion that's happening. Whoop, whoop, with a sound effect. Just like that. So here we have the shape that we can start with. Now, the next thing, we're going to take these corners off. And the easiest way that I like to do this is with this cut. You can also take them with this. I sometimes find that I dig too much into it, but if you're careful, you can actually just take a little bit, just like this, and then dig a little bit deeper. As long as you're keeping a constant pressure onto the wood, you can create those facets. Just a little one more. Just like that. And you have these, sometimes they just wrap around your knife like that. It's quite nice. So we created another facet. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to create one on each corner, and I'm going to end up with 8. Because we're adding 4 to the already existing 4. So we're going to do the same thing, just taking a little bit at a time. So again, my knife is steady. It can be steady here, but I want to bring it a little bit up higher so I can actually see what I'm doing. And just like that. And the same on this side. Just so. And we have all these little curlies, look. And one more. Like that. So now we have an octagon. We have 8 facets. We might want to go a little bit deeper here because we ideally want all these facets to be equal. I mean, it's not terrible, but that's going to create a round shape. So just going a little bit deeper here. And we're going to do that on all the facets. And then we need to work on that top part that we can't reach at the moment, this. And we're going to go back to that cut we were doing earlier with supporting it towards our chest. Like so. Yeah? So I'm also checking towards the bottom because I want it to be more round. So I'm looking at it to see, okay, what side do I need to take a little bit more? So I'm just looking to create a round shape. And it's quite easy. I mean, all you're doing is just dragging the piece of wood onto your knife. It's quite lazy to make chopsticks, really. In a good way. So now I'm going to do the same cut here, just taking a little bit, just keeping in mind that on particular, like this particular side is wanting to go the other way around. We saw that earlier. So I'm going to do that push cut motion. Thumb push all the way to the end. I don't particularly like this because it's easy to dig into the wood when you're doing a facet. But if you go slow, that should be okay. And here, we're going to have to go this way, towards ourselves. So what I'm looking at now, I'm looking at this line to stay fairly straight and the same sort of distance, the same thickness, or actually tapering slowly, meaning getting wider at the end and slowly tapering thinner towards the tip of the chopstick. We're going to do the same here. Just like so. And on this side, here it wants to break, you can see. So I need to go at the other direction. And it's fine at this point because we're going to go round. So even if you have a little bit of damage like this, we're going to eventually take those facets off even more, those corners that we've created, all these edges, and that's how we start creating a round shape. We just start taking the edges off. Just so. So if you want to stop here, this is how you get a faceted chopstick. Just like so. And I do this all the time, even when I'm not intending to create a faceted chopstick. Maybe not so methodical, but pretty close, where I create these beautiful facets, maybe not so perfect and exact, but I don't know, it's just good practice. And so this is basically what we have in this particular one. It's just a little bit thicker, but you have all these corners all throughout. So as I'm looking at it, I'm noticing that it's quite thick here, and I would take a little bit more from that thickness. And here, I have a feeling it's going to want to go the other direction, no? And when we're going to start rounding it, it's going to be quite easy to just adjust and take a little, whoops, this wants to go the other direction. Just like so. Just a little bit on this side. And then we're ready to start rounding it. So to round it, it's really easy. It's exactly the same thing that we did, except we're just going to take the edges off in a much finer way, basically. So we are creating, gosh, what is this? 8 times a times 2, no, 8 times 4. We're basically creating lots of facets.
Choptagonal.
Yes, a chopstick. Exactly that. And at this point, it's just a matter of just feeling your way into a round shape. And the only way that you do that is just feeling it with your hand, and just making sure that it's equal thickness, that it doesn't have any high points, and just working all the way down, or however far you can reach with a knife when you cut this way. And this is where you have those beautiful tool marks that a lot of people appreciate. Of course, if you want to have a smooth surface, you can just take your scraper out, you can burnish it, and it's going to be quite smooth. Sometimes the wood, even if it's straight like this, will want to change direction, like it wants to do here. So then you'll just turn it around and work with it. So I'm just going on the long side of those edges that we've created earlier, and just taking the high points off, basically. And I'm doing that at this point quite randomly, I think. And once I go around all of them, or even at this moment when I'm doing one side, I'm just starting to feel if I don't have any bumps, or so I'm just taking those high points off from those facets we just created, and it's going to turn around. Yeah, so you can see this part is round. Here we still have those facets. So we just keep going. And it's quite satisfying actually to make a chopstick. It just feels good. You can use it to try some, it can be also a good fun thing to do to start before you start making some fun, exciting meals. They can be wonderful presents, quite easy to make. And we'll talk a little bit. You saw at the beginning of the video all these ways in which you can decorate them, and that can be quite fun. Some bright colored chopsticks will always bring a smile to someone's face. And yeah, you can take your chopsticks with you, like when you take your spoons with you. How cool would that be? So we're almost done. That was fast. You can also make them slightly thinner, like the ones that I used as an example earlier. They're a little bit thinner at the tip, but it's really personal preference. So that's pretty much it. This is a little bit thinner, and you can go. Well, this is the one that we started with as an example. So it's a little bit thinner down at the bottom. It's just about the same thickness at the top. It's just slightly longer, which is fine. So now we can think about, let's make it maybe slightly thinner. It's so easy to adjust. All you do is just take a little bit more, slightly tapering down, and just twisting the wood in your hand as you go around taking facets. So then you take one, twist it a little, and you take a little bit of wood next to each cut, and you work your way around. That's really how you thin it, just like so. So we're pretty much done with this shape. around on the surface. So now we only need to do the two ends and round them off. So here I'm going to cut at an angle.
So this is the narrow end.
This is the narrow end, yes. The part that you're going to eat with, the narrow end. And I'm just cutting the corners off, basically taking a little bit at an angle, not a very steep angle, just to take those corners off. And then I'm going to take the corners off of that part in the middle that remained. And now we have a round piece. And just gently round it off. It's very, very quick. Just like that. We're going to do the same here. You can make it round, or you can have a sharp angle like this, which I kind of like. So I'll show you how to do the sharp angle. I'm just going to imagine a line that's going to be the angle that I want this at. And I'm basically just cutting a little bit at a time, following that flat surface that I'm imagining. Just like so. So from the profile, it's going to be this flat. Now when you get to the tip here, you don't want to keep going, because this wood might tear, or any wood might tear. So I'm going to come at an angle and cut into the center. And then from this side, the same, at an angle, cutting into the center. So now we have a little, is it slanted? Slanted surface. Like so. But these edges are just like the edges at the bottom, so I want to round those slightly. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just go around with my knife at an angle, just like so, and taking those off. Just a little bit at a time, and in the center, like that. So here's our chopstick. Now, as a quick idea, that's something that you could do. Don't ruin it, like I'm about to do here. I just wanted to make it a little bit thinner. But what you can do is, at this point, you can bring in some decoration. And because the surface is like this, I think it would be fun if we create some lines this way. So I'm going to put the knife at the same angle, just like so, and just cut into it and just go around up to here in the front, and then come on back up at the same angle at the surface at the top. Just like so. And meet in the middle. So it's like this, parallel to this line. And now I'm going to come and create like a little channel, like a little groove that's going to look like this. It's just, I mean, there are a gazillion ways that you can decorate a chopstick, but this is probably the simplest way. Is just create a little indentation, just a little groove into the wood, and you have a decorated chopstick. Let's just go around the cut that you created all the way to the top, just like so. Ta-da! So this is how you can decorate it, and you can also create two of them if you want, like so.
So Andreea, we have finished Project Chopstick.
We have. Yes, we are finished. Here they are. 2 chopsticks. We did a little bit of chip carving. And yeah, that easy and fun. They're quite fun to make.
So in terms of finishing the chopsticks, are there any kind of final tips and suggestions in like oiling and burnishing and things like that?
Yes, you can oil them with any oil that you would use for the spoon. Walnut oil, linseed oil, tongue oil, half and half, all of those options. So just oil them like you would. Make sure they're dry if you're waiting for, if you're doing them while they're green. And then you can also burnish them. And you can burnish them just with the back of the knife if it's a round surface, or your regular burnishing tool. You can burnish them with the back of a kitchen knife, anything that's a hard surface and it's round. And that's basically going to take away all the tiny little tool marks, if there are any. If you like that, and if you like the look of a handmade tool, you can leave those on. They're not going to bother you. It's actually probably going to be a little bit more tactile when you use them. So it's a personal preference, but yeah, lots of options. You can paint them. For example, this little bit here that we have that's chip carved, you can actually paint this part. So lots of ways to play with it. They're quite creative shapes.
So there you have it, my friends. That is a wrap for this video. Andreea.
Thank you.
The chopstick queen.
I know, right?
Thank you. So this is a project, like I said, I've been really eager to cover for quite some time. So it's been awesome. Andrea's presented the opportunity for me to capture her process so that you may learn. As mentioned throughout this video, this is kind of a relatively simple project, but as you've seen throughout this entire tutorial, there are some nuances involved. But as we said at the very beginning and throughout, these skills are transferable to no matter what else you carve. Okay, all the principles are the same, such as grain direction, positioning of your knives, axe, etc. But the point being, comparatively to things like spoons and other utensils, this is a simpler item to carve. And as you stated throughout the video, it's great for using offcuts and things like that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's great. You can make smaller ones, thin ones. I mean, they're really fun to make, different colored ones. It's a great use of scraps of wood, don't have to be green. So yeah, all the things that you forgot a log somewhere and you don't know what to do with it, make chopsticks. It's easy.
And it's also great, not to sound cliche, but it's all part and parcel of the less waste and plastic waste and things like that. Exactly. You go to a lot of the kind of Far Eastern places like Chinese restaurants, Thai restaurants, this, that, the other. It's kind of like the throwaway mentality, you know, with chopsticks. But yeah, you know, if you carve a project like this, it's obviously a lot more sentimental. Yeah, you can just keep it on you. And at a pinch, as a guy, I can say this, it makes a great hairpin as well.
Yeah, me too, I can say that.
At a pinch. It took me ages to work out how to tie my hair with a chopstick, years. And eventually I found a tutorial with some young girl in America, like, showing it. She didn't even talk, she just did it. Like, and then she did it fast, then she did it in slow motion. I was like, that's how you do it. It took me years to figure out how to tie my hair up in a chopstick. But anyway, that's long hair problems. That's it. That's it. We can do it now. So there you go, guys. That is a wrap for this video. As I mentioned, this is a continuation of other videos that I have filmed with Andreea. Really do recommend you go check those out. Links to those will be down in the description. Also, a link down below to Andrea's Instagram. She does a plethora of work, as I mentioned at the very beginning. You know, she makes a prolific carver herself, but she also teaches as well. She's getting big into that, as well as in the future looking to potentially run some courses and whatnot of her own. So all of that information, you can find it on her Instagram and her website. The final thing I would ask of you is, if you gained any value from this video whatsoever, 2 things. Number 1, give Andreea a follow on Instagram. And number 2, if you actually do carve a pair of chopsticks, or even just the one as a hairpin, right? It would mean the world to me. Tag Andreea.
Yeah, please do.
So she can see kind of like, you know, what, you know, the kind of the version that you try yourself, regardless of what skill level that you're at. It's a fantastic project to get your teeth into. So there you go, guys. That is a wrap for this video. Andreea, thank you so much once again.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
So guys, As always, I really do appreciate you watching. Links to everything down below in the description, and I shall see you on the next installment. Until then, I hope whatever you're doing, you have a blessed day, a blessed week ahead. For myself, Zed Outdoors, and Andreea Grad, peace out.